Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the AOC Q27G3XMN. If at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. But let's jump into it. Firstly, this is a 27-inch screen size with a 2560 by 1440p resolution. Now, the special part about this monitor is that it is a mini LED lit VA panel with local dimming zones, and that's full array local dimming. So if you want to get basically the cheapest possible full true HDR experience, this is probably the best monitor on the market for that. This is a very, very cool monitor. Now let's talk about the finish of it. Matte finishes, if you don't know, decreased picture clarity. That's why some of the most beautiful screens that you've seen in your life, like your phone or possibly your TV, those are glossy finishes because they don't have a layer that is not just diffusing the light basically, but also diffusing the image. But the good thing is, while this is a matte finish and basically every gaming monitor in the industry is basically a matte finish or has a matte finish, this one is on the thinner side, so you don't get as much as that dirty screen effect, which is good. Now for the ports, this is pretty basic, but it has two HDMI 2.0s, one DisplayPort 1.4, and then a 3.5mm audio out, and that's it. That's all the ports. But that's all you really need for this monitor. This isn't at a premium enough price tag to have something like USB Type-C. Now, this hits 180 Hertz and has FreeSync Premium Pro, which if you don't know, FreeSync Premium Pro means you can have variable refresh rate on, so like G-Sync, which is compatible with obviously, but you can have that on with HDR, which is super important because a lot of you buying this are probably gonna have this in HDR quite a bit of the time, because it's just an awesome experience. So let's talk about that. Brightness in SDR, so not in HDR. I believe since this came out in like December-ish time, maybe September, but I believe this has been updated and had firmware updates that brought its SDR brightness up to 560 nits in SDR. That's a lot of brightness. Not only does that make the image look super beautiful and vibrant and just is impressive at this price point, but it also helps keep a lot of reflections away or is bright enough to just cancel out the reflections. Now, let's talk about HDR because again, that's the biggest point of this monitor. This thing rocks, increasing its peak brightness well over 1,000 nits in those highlights. At this price point, that is an amazing true HDR experience. It's not perfect, but it is incredible for the money. But along with the brightness for the HDR experience, colors are very important. So how does it do? Well, firstly, it covers a very wide amount of the DCI-P3 color gamut, covering 98.5%. That is very impressive. This makes for great, beautiful colors in HDR. Now, in my opinion, a VA panel, which this is a VA panels never just seem to have as good of colors as IPS panels. Even if they have the color gamut, even if they have a thinner matte coating, they just never look the same visually. And that's still the case here, but this is still far better than most VA panels that you've probably seen before. This panel is still extremely pretty though. Now, color accuracy out of the box wasn't perfect, but without doing a full calibration, I was able to pull down the reds just a bit, and that's all I needed to do to make these colors much, much better. So not a lot of adjustments. You can see on screen what I did. I think I went into the user and then left everything at its middle ground, which was 50, and I think I pulled the reds down to like 47% or something like that. But yeah, and just with that little change, it did quite a lot. Now, contrast ratio, local dimming, and backlight bleed, let's talk about it. Because this is mini LED lit with 336 local dimming zones, this is capable of almost 10,000 to 1 contrast ratio. Now, while this is not like on OLED's territory of amazing contrast ratio, that is more what it feels like visually. So if you're thinking, oh, an IPS panel is 1,000 to 1, this is 10,000 to 1, and then you know, an OLED is infinite to 1 or like 1,000,000 to 1 or whatever. The experience is closer to an OLED than it is an IPS panel with that bluish instead of black, deep, inky blackness. So this is definitely closer on that side, even though this isn't absolutely insane, like 50,000, 80,000, or 100,000 to 1, this is still very, very impressive. And visually, it is absolutely beautiful. This means the blacks are significantly deeper and darker and inkier. And in games and movies, this just looks amazing. It is insane for the money. Now, for backlight bleed, my unit had none, which is very impressive. Also, one thing to note is that the native contrast ratio is also very, very good at around, I think, 6,000 to 1. So that's very impressive still. Even without local dimming on, this still has nice deep blacks. Now, one last thing to mention with local dimming is the best setting I found is medium, not the, I think it was called strong instead of like high. So medium is the best setting. I would leave it in that and just don't touch it. Now let's talk about response time and ghosting. VA panels typically have the worst ghosting in the industry currently right now. Just as a panel type, that's usually how it is. They're definitely more prone to having more extreme ghosting. And in the traditional way of a VA panel, this does have ghosting. But again, similar to like most VA panels, this is mainly with darker objects. So in the brighter scenes, you're not going to notice that much ghosting, but it's really with the darker scenes, specifically dark trees over here, or some darker object. That's what you're really going to notice ghosting in more, which can be annoying. If you're playing Warzone and you go inside in a dark area, you're definitely going to notice more ghosting. So that is the trade-off. Still though, on this panel, it has some of the lowest in the 90th percentile of VA panels that are significantly better. It has very, very low ghosting overall, but you're still going to get far more than an IPS or a OLED. Personally, I think the trade-off for the amazing brightness, black levels, and color gamut make this worth it, but this is 100% personal preference. If you can't deal with ghosting, or if that's something you just don't want, and you don't really care about black levels or a beautiful panel, you just want speed, this obviously isn't even close to the panel for you. But if you really want a beautiful panel, if you love the vibrancy and the deep blacks and everything like that, then this definitely is something to heavily consider. This is an awesome monitor for the price. All right, stand and build quality here. This is one of my favorite AOC stands. Some of AOC stands can be kind of mid and just okay. They typically have good adjustability, which this one does have, but they just don't feel polished or like more expensive monitors. But this one feels great. It's a good design. It feels like it was custom designed for this monitor, which is what you want it to feel like, something like LG or Dell. It feels like a very polished overall product. That's what this feels like, and that's really good. This doesn't feel ultra budgety and doesn't look childish. The materials here feel good. Overall, yeah, no problems with the stand here. Now, the menu system and controls absolutely suck. This is terrible. I've just talked about this on another AOC that I reviewed, but they're horrible. This has 5 buttons. One is a dedicated power button, which I enjoy having, but then it's controlled with 4 other buttons that are in a row on the right side underneath the chin. It's not an intuitive system. It's not very easy to use. Even when you use it, it's slower than just a joystick. The menu system itself is a little bit confusing, but overall not bad, but it's also not pretty. So overall, this is definitely below average. This is on the worst menu systems. For me, not a deal breaker, right? You can get used to it. You can get in there, change your settings, and then, well, you probably won't change your settings after you really get those locked in. So not a deal breaker here, but definitely something to consider. For Vesa compatibility, it's compatible with 100mm by 100mm Vesa mounts, and it wouldn't be too hard to mount this on a monitor arm or anything that you want. Now, the most important section of the video, price and value. This comes in at $279.99, which is a fantastic price tag. I don't think I've ever seen a monitor that is mini LED lit with all of these specs at anywhere close to that price tag. This is very, very impressive, and it really makes me excited for the future. Now, at that price tag, this is one of the most beautiful monitors that you're going to see. It also is capable of true HDR. So if that's something that's really important to you, I mean, you should probably get this monitor. For the price, it's really, really worth it. Impressive black levels, fantastic brightness, and great colors. Considering that this is a VA panel, makes this absolutely worth it, and I absolutely recommend it. Okay, if you want to check it out, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. By no means is this monitor perfect, right? The ghosting is definitely something to consider. It's only got 180 hertz, doesn't have higher, but for the beauty of this panel, everything that it gives you for the price tag, I think it is so stupid worth it. And I think it would be very difficult for someone to buy this monitor and not think that it is an absolutely fantastic value. But yeah, this is Type C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.